There was about 3 years of my life that were really, really consumed by binge eating disorder. I had kind of versions of binge eating disorder and bulimia for maybe a decade, I would argue, but 3 years in particular, I remember just taking over my life. And I wanted to do a video today because, quite honestly, actually, someone commented on my YouTube channel about dealing with binge eating disorder for 30 years. And it really spoke to me because I know so many people have dealt with this condition, this mental health related condition. And it's one of those things that's kind of hard to understand, especially if you haven't gone through it. Like if you don't know what it's like, then it's really hard to explain. But I wanted to do a video to give you a little bit of an overview of this condition, this disorder, and also offer some insights into maybe some strategies that perhaps could work for you in moving past it or through it, or at least trying to understand it a little bit more and what's going on. So this video today is about binge eating disorder. I'm Deanna Bedoya. If you haven't been here before, I like to talk about weight and appetite and being human and how difficult that all is sometimes. But ultimately, I just want us to enjoy our lives more and enjoy food more and enjoy these bodies we get to live in a little bit more. And I know that for a lot of people, binge eating disorder and other disordered eating behavior can really negatively impact our ability to really enjoy our lives. So that's why I want to chat about it today. So before we get started, you can't really talk about binge eating disorder without talking a little bit about our emotions, because every situation is a bit different, but we are talking about the mind. They're a lot more about what's going on here than about just what's going on here. Food is the symptom. Food is a symptom of what's going on in our minds and with our emotions and everything, and a lot of other things as well. So just to get us started, I like to talk a lot about appetite, and appetite can definitely, our appetite and our desire to eat, desire to seek out food can affect our emotions. But really, when we're talking about binge eating disorder, at least in part, we're often talking about our emotions or something going on in our mind that's affecting our desire to eat. And it's not that our thinking brain is thinking, go and eat something, is that there's something else that's really hard to explain and really hard to capture that's motivating our desire to go and seek out food. Often, just to feel different or to feel better or to feel something. It's really hard to say, and I should really say that everybody's situation is different. I'll tell you a little bit about my own experience with binge eating disorder, but I really want you to honor your own experience and whatever has kind of happened with you and your own experience with that. Like, that is extremely valid, but I'll give you some of my own experience plus kind of what the research says as well, so we can understand this condition a bit better. Okay, so why I brought up the emotion conversation first is that one of the things that they're talking about a little bit more in the research literature is that, maybe food addiction, maybe emotional eating, maybe binge eating disorder, maybe all these versions of overeating for emotional reasons, they're not like discrete situations, but maybe there's some sort of like continuum where all of these kind of lie within. And binge eating disorder might be seen, if we were to think about it, as a continuum on kind of one extreme of that continuum, where our ability to control our food intake is kind of basically overridden by something that is more emotional in nature, more kind of under this like mental thinking. It's not about our thinking. There's something below that. You can't will yourself out of a binge eating episode. necessarily, because there's things that are going on more below the surface. And there's a lot of like inhibition deficits, like our ability to stop ourselves from eating too much is really, really compromised when there is a binge eating episode, and especially when there is binge eating disorder. So I won't spend too much time on this, but just to briefly go over the diagnostic criteria of binge eating disorder. One of the things that differentiates it from overeating. So overeating, I think of Christmas, I think of New Year's, I think of going out with friends, those times where we might eat a lot, often with other people, or often because there's a lot of tasty food around. That's not really binge eating. Binge eating is something that happens in a discrete period of time. So usually it's within like a 2-hour period or less. It's like there's a time component to it. And one of the biggest or most important diagnostic criteria for binge eating disorder, which is really, really hard to understand if you've never experienced, is this feeling of lack of control. So when I say control, I'm again talking about that thinking brain, that willpower-y part of our brain that's like stop, that stop signal that we have, that we think we have, that we think is in control. But so interesting that during a binge eating episode, or with recurrent episodes of binge eating, that ability to stop, it's just like it's like stop, okay, stop, okay, stop, okay. But that desire to binge eat and that motivation towards binge eating is staying kind of constant and basically overriding or not even listening to that stop signal. So something else we see in binge eating disorder, besides that lack of control, that's really key to binge eating disorder and bulimia nervosa as well, but just binge eating disorder is what we're focusing on today. What else we see is that typically with this episode of binge eating disorder, people eat really quickly. They might eat till they're uncomfortably full. They might eat when they're not hungry. They often do so alone, but not necessarily. And there might be some feelings of disgust and shame that are felt towards ourselves. And again, if we're just diagnosing, do not self-diagnose. This is really important to go and talk to someone about this as well. I am not a counselor or a psychiatrist. I'm an educator, so don't let me diagnose you. You always go with a professional. But in order to be diagnosed with this, 3 of those things would have to exist, in addition to eating a lot in a short period of time, that 2-hour window usually, and I can't say this enough, that feeling of lack of control, which, as I keep saying, is really hard to explain to someone that's never felt that way. Other diagnostic criteria is distress over the binge eating episode, and then there's different levels of severity with binge eating disorder. Some people might do it once a week for 3 months, and then that would still be considered binge eating disorder. If it's happening less than that, we might not diagnose it. It might not be diagnosed as binge eating disorder. But then there's different levels of severity as well. Like some people will have binges 5 times, 10 times, 14 times or more in a week. So really depends on that person. And I mentioned bulimia before. Binge eating disorder and bulimia they share the binge eating. The binge is shared between both bulimia and binge eating disorder, but the difference between bulimia and binge eating disorder is that in binge eating disorder, there's no compensation. So with someone with bulimia, they will binge eat, just like I just talked about, but then there'll be some sort of compensation. Some people throw up, some people use laxatives. I had a form of bulimia myself where I over-exercised, like obsessively, the next day after a binge. So that's bulimia. Binge eating disorder, there's no compensation. So it's unsurprising that there's a strong correlation between binge eating disorder and obesity. And if someone has both obesity and binge eating disorder, a question there could be, should we treat the obesity first, or should we treat the binge eating disorder first? And that's, again, a question for a healthcare practitioner that you can decide yourself. Okay, so that was just like a background of binge eating disorder, just so we can have kind of the psychological aspect of it. But I wanted to give you a bit of a personal account on my binge eating pattern, not because it it describes everyone's situation, but just because it like might give you a framework to help understand it. So I'll tell you that those years when I was really kind of taken over by this disorder were years where I didn't feel really good about myself. Those were years where I was being really, really hard on myself, and I didn't have a lot of self-worth. I was very insecure. I said a lot of mean stuff to myself in those years, and I kind of have a history of that. I'm a lot better these days. I'm a lot nicer to myself these days. But those years when I was like, when it was really bad, weren't great mental health wise for myself. And during a binging cycle, what was very common, which is something we see a lot in binging disorder as well, is that, let's say the night before I have a binge, and then that day, the next day, I would be so mean to myself, so cruel with myself. I would say mean things to myself, and I would put on like strong restrictions around eating. I would be like, well, you ate so much last night, and I'd say a bunch of mean stuff, and so you're not allowed to eat anything. You're only allowed to eat vegetables today. You're not allowed to eat this. You have to starve yourself. I had all of these restrictions and rules, which obviously wasn't great for my mental health either. And so I wasn't well mentally. And then so I would go through the day restricting. And, one of the things that restricting does is the longer you go without eating, your hunger signals start coming up, and I could suppress them for a while, but that physiology is strong, and my hunger signals would start creeping up, especially towards the end of the day when our thinking brain is just, when our willpower, it's less effective at the end of the day usually as well, especially after we've been like trying to do so much all day as well. And so my hunger would be out of control, my mind wouldn't be good, I would be sad, and I would try to hold back as much as I can, but eventually I wasn't feeling good, and I knew that the fridge and what was in the fridge, and it was never chicken, and it was never broccoli, but it was often like, that high calorie, highly palatable foods, we'll call them, high sugar, high fat, quick calories kind of food. Those would really call me. And I would go to the fridge, and I would stand in front of the fridge, and I would just eat so quickly. And part of the reason I was eating so quickly and so aggressively, and I don't pretend to fully understand what was going on in my mind, but I know that I was trying to feel something. I was trying to satisfy body hunger because I wasn't satisfied, absolutely. But I was also trying to feel, I don't know if I was trying to numb or I was trying to feel something, but I didn't feel good, and food is rewarding, and I wanted that food to help reward me. And what I thought would happen is that the more I would eat, the better I would feel, and then maybe I would stop eating as much. But what I really noticed with my binge eating is that the good feeling, the feeling good part, like it was very temporary. It was like the minute I would eat, I would kind of, you get the buzz, the buzz off the food, but it never fixed the other stuff that was going on. And I never felt good. The food never made me feel good. It was doing something, and I don't exactly understand what it was doing. I think it was numbing. I think more than anything else, it was numbing however I was feeling. And so it's not like I was feeling better. It's not like that food was helping me feel happy again. It was just satisfying the body hunger, but I got way past that really quickly. And then it was just this cycle I got stuck in of like, eat, eat, eat. That what I'm trying to describe is that like temporarily feeling good or numb. I don't know. I don't really know. And And I don't think you need to know. But I'm just trying to describe what it was like for me to go through the binge eating episodes I went through, because I want to help you understand maybe what you are going through. And I know your situation is different than mine, and I'm not trying to say it's the same, but binge eating is not about like needing to eat. It's wanting to eat, and it's wanting to eat for a reason that's going on in our mind. And I'll tell you that restriction doesn't help, and being mean to yourself doesn't help, and giving yourself food in that moment feels temporarily good, very temporarily good, like in a fleeting way. But it got me stuck in a cycle that I found really, really hard to get out of. So why? So why was I going to the fridge? What was it? Like, obviously I needed to eat, and I was restricting, and that's what was making me eat. And that's actually one of the parts of getting out of binge eating patterns, is making sure you're still eating. And I know that's hard to do when you might have eaten too much the night before, but making sure you're still satisfying your body's basic needs, giving yourself protein, giving yourself fiber, giving yourself whole foods. That's really, really important, because your body needs to eat, and it'll eventually send you signals that makes you want to eat. So that's definitely part of helping to break some of this cycle. But then there's the other part. Then there's the mental health part of the cycle. And the thing about food is that food is inherently comforting. You know, when we cried as a baby, when we weren't feeling good, what did we get? We got mother's milk. When you go visit your grandma or your aunts or uncles, they showed love with food. Food is like, food is so wrapped up with like love and emotion. And so we think we're getting the satisfaction of food and the calories and the nutrients maybe, but there's also this like other element of it too. You know, that's how our parents showed us love when we were a kid. We felt love when, you know, our caregivers brought us food or made us something special. And sometimes when we think we're going to the fridge, what we're actually looking for is, I don't know, what is it? Is it love? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I don't have all the answers with this one. But food is inherently comforting, and then there is definitely this like urge to go and seek food based on its comforting nature. And I can't tell you, you know, what the solution for your binge eating might be, but knowing what your food cues are and what food offers you in that moment, if you can put your thinking brain on it in that moment and try to figure out what it's giving you. It's actually, I say that, but it's actually very hard for me to be in a binge and have any clear thinking. So maybe when you're out of the binge, try to think about what is it that food is giving you without judgment. No more judgment, no more shame. But like, what is it about that food in that moment that's getting you locked in that cycle? And it is a cycle. And so there's so many different emotional cues. We might be worried about what people are thinking about us. It could be the stress that we have at work, and we might have so many different stresses in the world. Oh my God, the world right now. And it can feel very overwhelming. And then food's something that gives us comfort. And food is something that helps us escape. And that's a beautiful thing about food, yes. But we don't want to get locked into that habit of needing food to escape or to feel good. You know, when we fight, when we feel lonely, when we see other people and their fake perfect lives that they put, you know, on Instagram, etc., that could be a cue. And I don't know what yours is, but part of appetite mastery is also trying to figure yourself out and be aware of what's happening in the moment. And I you know, watching this video isn't necessarily going to stop your binge eating right away. But if there's one thing that I would add to your toolkit, besides making sure you're eating enough, making sure you're eating whole foods, making sure you're eating enough protein and fiber to satisfy your body hunger, in that moment when you have the cue and that makes you want to go eat, could you put just a little bit of time between the trigger and the response, the cue and the response? We want to break the trigger react, that really integrated, tightly linked pattern that's there. And one of the things we can do to help break that pattern a little bit, disrupt that pattern a little bit, is add a bit of a pause in there. Again, that's not going to change overnight, but more that we add that pause in, more that we try to understand what's going on, more that we're nicer to ourselves, the more that it could potentially help us manage what's going on. And just like a note about emotions and food, and I don't know what you've been through or what you're going through or what your childhood was like or how you grew up, or I don't know any of it. And no one's really going to know what went on for you or what is promoting this particular situation in you. And I just want to acknowledge that. And food might give us comfort in the moment, but we can also give ourselves what food gives us too. So if we are taking binge eating as a condition that's not really about thinking about food and not necessarily consciously wanting to go get food, there's something below that radar that's a lot more linked in a part of our system called the limbic system, and with our reward system as well. There's something going on below the surface that's making us want to go seek food, maybe for numbing reasons, maybe for seeking love or comfort reasons. Another way to think about binge eating and managing it is what if food gives you something in that moment, what can you give to yourself? How can you be kind to yourself? How can you give yourself the love that maybe you feel food is giving you? People don't often binge eat when everything in their life is going great and they feel satisfied in every aspect, which, okay, fair. Who feels satisfied in every aspect of their lives? Fair. But I don't know. I think that I was someone that spent a lot of my life feeling that I didn't deserve to feel good, or I didn't deserve to feel whole, or that I was ugly or not likable, not lovable, and all this stuff. And I just was really, really mean to myself because of it. And that for sure didn't help my mental health. And that for sure didn't help my binge eating either. So what makes you feel good? What could potentially help you comfort yourself? What could potentially help you feel good in your body? That's not just food. For me, on this slide right here, I'll tell you, time in nature helps so much. Journaling can help. Meditation has been life-changing for me in feeling a lot better and kind of being more present as well. Talking to people that I trust. Not everyone's going to understand. Don't just talk to people who aren't careful with your emotions. And sometimes a good cry, sometimes a good sing. Those are things that make me feel really good. And I'm not again saying that that's going to fix the binge eating overnight, but these are things that you're allowed to give to yourself because you're allowed to feel good and you deserve to feel good. And I'm sorry if anyone ever told you that you don't deserve that, but you do. You 100% do. And maybe if there's some kind of deeper things going on, it might be worth going to talk to someone. There are some mental health professionals. I know people have been burned by mental health professionals in the past, but there is someone that would understand what you're going through. I don't know if you have coverage through work or coverage at all, but talking to a professional that has a background in binge eating disorder or bulimia in particular, that might be really worth it. I will say that I didn't go that route. But first of all, when I found out that I had binge eating disorders, I just thought there was something super wrong with me. I didn't even know this was a situation. But something that really helped me that is often recommended, and you can see that this one's been weathered quite a bit, but this book it's often recommended for individuals with binge eating. It was transformative at the time. I don't remember it completely, but I have it in my office, and I I think of it fondly because I know it was really part of me getting out of my head with my own binge eating. So maybe if you've read it before, maybe it's time to pick it up again, or maybe it's worth picking up as well. I, again, don't know what's going to help, but I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of binge eating disorder and to hopefully give you some compassion around it and give you a little bit more non-judgment and comfort and love around it as well. And I also really wanted to say that just because you've had this condition for a long time doesn't mean you're going to have it forever. And I want you to know that a lot of people that seek treatment do get better. And this isn't something that you have to have for the rest of your life. And I need you to believe that. Because believing that, knowing you're worthy of getting better, and knowing that there's things that are going to work for you to get better, and I don't know what they are, but there is a combination that can help you get out of this. I promise you. You got to believe that, and maybe take a step towards maybe some of the things I talked about in this video, maybe reading this book, maybe speaking to a healthcare professional that can hopefully help you get better. And hopefully, again, what's the point is so we can have positive relationships with our body and with food so we can enjoy our lives more. So thanks for listening today. Wish you a lot of love. Sending you a lot of love. Deanna Bedoya, and we'll see you in another video.